Well, hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining this first session for Oktoberfest 2019, hashtag TeamsFest. Hopefully you guys can hear me and see me okay, and see the content in the room as well. I'll just adjust some lighting here as well so you guys can see me, as opposed to being mysterious and in the dark. I think Randy's on the call as well. Randy, can you see and hear everything okay?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay,
I can see the presentation. You're still in the dark though.
I'm still in the dark. That's probably a good thing, to be honest. I literally just got off of a flight about 15 minutes ago. So zoomed home on the motorcycle. I did have enough time to ensure the Steinglass had beer in it, though. So we've got that going. It says Oktoberfest on it as well. So cheers to anyone else who's drinking a beer or two out there. So as an introduction, my name is Craig Chiffers. I'm a principal architect with ICOM Australia here in Sydney. I'm also a Microsoft MVP as well. I focus on Teams and Skype for Business. And that falls under the banner, if you know the MVP program, under Office Apps and Services. Now, we've got about 40 minutes or so, give or take, I've been told not to ramble on too much. Just a few housekeeping things before we dive in. Make sure you've got yourself a beer, or at least some form of beverage. I actually have many on my desk at the moment. For some reason, I've got a Sprite and a Gatorade as well. A couple other things as well. Be sure to use the hashtag TeamsFest. That's at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen there. If you're tweeting on Twitter, if you're taking screenshots. Hilariously, my cat has a habit of suddenly appearing on the screen here during a video call. So if that happens, be sure to get a screenshot of that, because everyone in the office always finds that hilarious. He has a habit of rotating himself potentially the wrong way, and you get the wrong end of him. But anyways, as I said, thanks very much for joining the session. This is all about getting the best experience with Microsoft Teams meetings. I think we should just get straight into it if everyone's ready. So meetings, love them or hate them, they are a big part of our day-to-day life. In fact, today, I probably would need two hands to count the amount of meetings that I was on today. Some of them were customer facing, some of them were Teams calls. I think I may have even been on on another call beginning with the letter Z, four-letter word. You can probably guess what it is. So many calls, so many meetings. We love meetings, or we love to have them anyway. But we have meetings for everything, right? There's so many different styles of meetings today. We have agile meetings, boardroom meetings, dial-in conferences, WebExes. We have quick coffee catch-ups. We have meetings about having meetings. We have meetings about having less meetings. And a favorite of a particular program manager or project manager that I work with is the old 4 p.m. Friday meeting. Who loves a good 4 p.m. Friday meeting? I mean, as long as it includes, a few of these, we'll be right. But what's with that, right? 4 p.m. Friday meeting. Nothing gets done after about midday, at least here in Australia on a Friday. So 4 p.m. Friday meetings, they can get lost as far as I'm concerned. But we spend a lot of our day in meetings. These are some statistics that I pulled off the web prior to doing this presentation. I think the one that really stands out the most for me is the one around clear agendas. So approximately 37% of meetings have clear set agendas. So when you receive a meeting request, or maybe you send one out, how often do those meetings actually have clear agendas? I could probably count on my hands that today I probably attended maybe 10 meetings today. Only one of those meetings actually had a clear agenda. I knew why I was there. I knew what I was there for. I knew I had to present some kind of information to the customer as well. The meeting lasted for about 25, 30 minutes, and things got ticked off and action items got actioned, and people had some things to follow up on, but we all knew why we were there. Ask yourself, how often do you receive a meeting request where the agenda is a little bit ambiguous, or the person that's invited you has just sort of invited you because they think you might need to be there, and you need to attend in person, or you have to join the call and you're maybe on the train and you're using your mobile phone and the experience isn't great, you keep dropping in and out. So yeah, having clear agendas is key to getting the best out of meetings. And the other one here as well is that meetings last between 31 and 60 minutes. So I attend a lot of meetings that should last 30 minutes, but they tend to sort of extend past that 30-minute line. You know, they sort of overrun by a few minutes, and it causes issues because it means that, well, potentially I switch off after about the first 15, 20 minutes, because if someone's talking for more than 60 minutes, or I'm going to switch off, it's going to happen. But we waste so much time in meetings. So as I said, clear agendas, that's where we need to go, which is a bit ironic because I'm not being very clear about why we spend a lot of time in meetings. But as I said, the key takeaway here is that so many meetings are sent out without clear agendas. The other thing as well is, and I'm very guilty of this, I'll hold my hand up, and I'm sure many of you guys are doing it right now. Approximately 69% of attendees, I think that number's a lot higher, check their emails during meetings, during calls. I do it. I'll sit on a call whilst the customer's rattling off some information about something that potentially might be super important, but I'm not really paying attention, and I'm sat here tweeting, and I'm sat here, you know, clearing my inbox. I'm not really partaking in the meeting. So why am I even there if I'm just sat there clearing my inbox? The other issue is that meetings take a long time to get set up. Now, the industry standard, you may have heard this before, but the industry standard to set a meeting up today, right now, is approximately 15 minutes. So that's from the time you walk in. So if your meeting starts at 9 a.m., you've walked into the room. It's going to take you approximately 15 minutes to, you know, grab your laptop. Here's a spare one I prepared earlier. Set it up on the desk, maybe plug it into the projector. Then you've got to figure out how to dial people in, and maybe you've forgotten your conference ID and what's the phone number. And hold on a minute, maybe Sarah was meant to be on the call as well, and why hasn't she dialed in? And someone calls Sarah, and then you get through to Sarah, and maybe someone's tried to put Sarah on a speakerphone on the mobile, and no one can really hear what she's trying to say. And it's just a massive headache, right? And of course, it normally involves IT as well. I mean, when we're dealing with C-suite execs, a lot of the times these guys maybe have these big board meetings once a quarter or even once a year. They're not used to the technology. And so when we ask them to go into these rooms and use the technology, and they just expect it to work, you know, just like that, they hit a button, they click join, and then nothing happens, or at least they think nothing's happened, they're going to call Joe in IT and say, can you come up here and run the meeting for me? And of course, they start to lose faith in the technology, start to lose faith in the ability for the technology to do its job, and they start reverting back to mobile phones or the common desk phone in the middle of the meeting room. And speaking of common desk phones in the middle of meeting rooms, this scenario probably looks quite familiar to a lot of us. I still walk into customers today, and they have meeting rooms that look just like this. I mean, you know, maybe they don't have the flowers on the table there, of course, and the flowers won't be color coordinated with the clock. Maybe they will, but this is a typical meeting room scenario, right? So, you know, we've got two desk phones going on here. I mean, that looks like a, you know, typical style conference phone, but what's this other handset doing here? Why is it here? Do I need to use that to dial people in? Are people having issues with the conferencing system and they've just solved the problem by having an additional handset? We've got a TV up here as well. Not sure if we can maybe connect our laptop to it or not via HDMI. I don't see any connectivity on the table there. I'm pretty sure OH&S are not going to be too happy if we run an HDMI cable from the back of the TV there all the way on the floor to, you know, Sarah's laptop that's sat here that all of a sudden has run out of power, because I don't see any PowerPoints in this room either. And we've got a flip chart here as well, which again is great for people that are actually in the room attending. But if you're on the other end or on the phone, how do you know what's being written on that flip chart? Maybe someone, you know, snaps a photo with their phone and sends you an email later on, and you figure out that you can't actually read the handwriting. And by that point, the information's gone. Someone's ripped that page off the flip chart and screwed it up and thrown it in the recycling bin. Information gone forever. And then, of course, you have these, the Panasonic Panaboards. I'm sure at some point you've probably come across one of these. Now, I've never actually seen one of these working. I've written all over them many times using whiteboard markers, but If you didn't know already, this device at the bottom here, in theory, should be able to produce a printout of what you've written on the board. I believe in black and white. I've never actually seen one working, though. Generally speaking, these things have power cords with them, but they're never plugged in. So they're just used as a dumb whiteboard, even though they have some kind of smarts about them. I mean, not by today's regards, but they have the ability to maybe produce what you've written on the whiteboard there, at least. We're not using the technology. We don't even know how these things work. As I said, I've never actually seen one working. I've seen plenty of them in meeting rooms, and I can imagine you guys probably have as well. So in terms of meeting rooms today, we have many different challenges. These are a couple that I see time and time again. So when we're talking about outdated technology, we're walking in the rooms and we're seeing those whiteboard printers, TVs and projectors that don't have HDMI inputs. Maybe they've only got VGA, and I genuinely don't recall the last time I bought a computer that had a VGA port on it. I mean, these certainly do not at all. And we're talking about conference room phones that are a little bit of a mystery. We maybe know how to call in and out of them, but if maybe two people want to get on a call, we're lost at that point. We'll have to reach for the manual or reach for Joe in IT. Another big one is limited connectivity in meeting rooms. Now, I know you're sat on the other end here at the moment, but hands up if you've ever walked into a meeting room with a laptop, and I do this sometimes because I forget to plug my laptop in and my phone into charge overnight, and I've got a 9 a.m. customer meeting in the morning. I walk into the meeting room, I open my laptop up, and it says it's flat, and then I'm stuck, right? Because I need to present something on the screen. Now, of course, I could be more prepared. I could have charged my laptop overnight, but if I didn't, because we all live in a non-perfect world sometimes, I need to be able to plug in. And I've walked into meeting rooms where there are no PowerPoints available on the desk, or maybe there's one like on the far side of the meeting room, and my Surface laptop's charger won't quite reach it, so I've got to kind of stand really awkwardly in the corner and use it. And of course, that steps onto Wi-Fi access as well. So again, walked into customer meeting rooms and said, oh, what's the Wi-Fi password? And, oh, no, sorry, Wi-Fi doesn't work in here. So have a think about it, right? We're giving users these, I mean, maybe not MacBooks, right? But we're giving, Surface laptops, Surface Go's, etc., portable devices. And we're saying, hey, we want you to be mobile and we want you to use your phones, etc. But when the users want to actually use those devices, bring them into meeting rooms to use and to access content on the network and charge the devices, they can't, because we're not providing them that level of access. And lastly, this is probably the big thing that's always driven home with me is I get asked this a lot. I go to a customer site and they say, Craig, last year we invested $500,000 in Polycom or Cisco equipment. How on earth do we bring that into Microsoft Teams? How do we reuse our Spark boards with Microsoft Teams? Now, of course, in the Microsoft world, they want you to go in and say, look, go in and tell them to replace everything, rip it all out, replace it with Teams meeting rooms. Now, that's not the real world. We all know that we can't do that, right? We all know that I can't go to the CIO and say, hey, I know you just spent $500,000 last year on your Cisco investment or your Polycom or other VC investment, but I know you want to move to Teams, so you actually need to rip all of that out and replace it with Teams meeting rooms. Unrealistic, right? So we need to find a way of solving that problem. We need to get from here to here, right? Now, those of you that are paying attention and not sat clearing your inboxes on your phones, yes, you, I can see you, yes, will notice that there's a big difference between that room and that room, mostly because it's probably a different building and a different stock photo as well. Yep, that's definitely a stock photo. But this room kind of screams productivity, right? So we've got a whiteboard on the screen, or an electronic board on the screen there with some kind of VC capability with a camera, got a touchpad there. Looks like we've probably got some charging points there as well. And, I'm sure there's a coffee machine over here somewhere as well, because what meeting isn't complete without a coffee machine? Now, of course, I know that we can move offices and just blow the building up and start again, right? But we don't always have that luxury, of course. So let's talk solutions instead. Of course, move offices, great. If you can afford it, why not? But let's be more realistic here and say, why don't we replace that outdated technology where we can? Let's get rid of those projectors, those whiteboards if we're not using them, those old school digital displays that don't have any inputs on them. Let's replace those conference room phones with something that is user friendly. Something like a Teams room system, perhaps. Hey, let's enhance the connectivity in the room. Give the users PowerPoints to charge all their devices. If they've got 6 phones, allow them to charge their phones. Even better, if you want to put wireless charging underneath the desk, go for it. I mean, most phones these days will support wireless charging. And give them access to the network. Give them adequate Wi-Fi, not just your employees and your users, but also guests that come in as well. Most guests will come in with a laptop and they'll maybe want to download the presentation to their laptop whilst they're there, if they're like me and they haven't prepared. So give that ability. And lastly, which we'll touch on a little bit, reuse those existing investments. And we can do that, not all the time, but a lot of the times we can go in and we can reuse those existing Cisco's and Polycom investments that we made a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. You can probably hear my cat meowing as well. No, he's not going to come in. He's going to sit at the door and meow instead. He'll make an appearance at some point. As I was saying, reuse those existing video conferencing solutions. And I'm going to show you how you can do that in a little while. Also, something that I've spoken about a little bit before, remember the whole clearing your inbox thing on your phone? Well, research has shown that simply enabling video during a meeting increases attentiveness. So right now I've got my video on. Everyone can see what I look like, hello, etc. You can see that I've just gotten off a flight and I took my motorcycle helmet off and I didn't even get a chance to do my hair, but that's all right. That's all good. But simply enabling video during a meeting, and someone's already done that there. You blurred the background there as well. Hi, Simon. Good stuff. Background blur. We do love background blur, by the way. It saves me quite a lot because I try washing in this room. And so if I turn it on, I could be anywhere, right? It's great. Try it. The next time you're on a video call or on a Teams call or a Skype call or a Cisco or whatever, turn your video on. And you'll be surprised the increase in productivity and attentiveness that simply being on video and being able to be seen and being there will have the effect on your meeting there. All right, let's talk about end user devices. Now, before I jump into that, if anyone does have any questions at any point, I'm very conscious of only having about 23 minutes remaining. But if we have some time at the end, you're more than welcome to put your questions in the conversation. Hopefully everyone can see that. If you just hover over the bottom of the screen, you'll see like a little chat icon. Put your questions there. I'll have a scroll through towards the end. Perhaps Randy can even assist me with asking those questions as well if he's around and he's paying attention. If not, I'll see how I go. Let's delve into end user devices. Ready. Good stuff, mate. Yeah. Good stuff. All right, so not specifically related to meeting rooms, but let's talk about handsets and headsets for a moment. Now, I'm assuming that you guys don't have something that looks like that in your organization. Maybe you do. If you do, maybe have a chat to me afterwards. I should be able to help you out with something a little bit more up to date. Yeah. And if you're using a headset that looks like that right now, more power to you. But yeah, we'll see how you go with that. Probably looking at something a little bit more like this, right? So your kind of typical handsets that maybe look a little bit like this, old school, now have a bit of yellow staining to them. Jane in accounts calls you every couple of weeks because she's forgotten how to enable conferencing or group pickup, etc. And your headsets as well, right? These are pretty typical. I've got one here that I'm not using at the moment. This is what is this, a Polycom, I think, or that's Plantronics. I've got a few more in the drawer here as well. I've got another Plantronics one there, etc. So plenty of headsets available. There's even little the 65Ts in that little box there as well. However, you may be in a situation where you're dealing with something that requires a proprietary headset. So how do we get from that to user-friendly handsets for Teams? And of course, you could put one of these in the meeting room if you want. There are conference room phones available from Yealink, but it's say a common area phone, for example. That's a T58A, I believe. The 56A is a little bit smaller and doesn't have the the folding screen, is to say, but a lot more user-friendly, right? They've got color screens, they're touch screen, the buttons are nice to press, the speakerphone's nice and loud, and Jane in accounts doesn't have to call you every time she forgets how to conference someone in because she can just do it herself via the touch screen. And headsets as well. I'm sure at some point in your life, someone has chimed in, or you've rattled on yourself at someone who's come to you and said, "Hey, I'm using these kinds of things, your wireless earbuds, right?" And they've plugged them into their computer, and they've come to you and said, "Hey, the audio quality here is shocking. I'm having a terrible time with Teams and Skype. The software's rubbish." And of course, we all know that to get the best experience, you need to use a certified device with Microsoft Teams. But one of these, you have to use a good headset. I'm using a Callisto for this call at the moment. One of these things here, a speakerphone that sits on the desk. But whatever you use, it has to be a Teams or Skype certified device. Vitally important. So what are the challenges around potentially me using PowerPoint? That's a challenge in itself. Challenges around replacing devices and swapping them out with something else. Well, first of all, when you replace something, it needs to work the same or better than what you're replacing, right? Don't go putting in a handset that removes 10 features that Jane in accounts uses every single day, because Jane in accounts is going to get very upset with you. If you rip that phone away from her and you don't give her a suitable replacement that either is the same or improves on her workflow, you're going to upset her. And that's a really quick way to fail with your project. Of course, replacing a device isn't always possible, right? We are talking about meeting rooms today, but you may have a situation where you've got a meeting room in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I've dealt with customers who have equipment literally in the middle of nowhere, and they can't run IP there. It has to be just standard copper. So it's not always possible to replace it. And of course, you may have special requirements as well, like proprietary headsets to a phone or a loud ringing speaker as well. And the key point to point out there is that headsets don't always work. Some people do prefer having a physical phone, and that's just because they want to slam it down, right? They're talking to someone and they get upset and like, bang! You can't really do that with a headset. I mean, if you could, but you'd probably end up breaking it. So considerations around these devices, and again, these do apply to meeting room phones, common area phones, anything to do with Teams at the end of the day. How do the devices feel? Get them, play around with them, drop them. How durable are they? Are they equal or better to what users have today? Remember, that key point is that a poor device experience equals a poor Teams experience. Your end user's voice experience with Teams is this device here, is the headset device. If this is rubbish, what do you think they're going to think about Teams? There are a whole bunch of handsets and headsets that are available today. Here's a quick snapshot of some of them. If you want to find out more, you can go to the Microsoft Teams device catalog. Now, Microsoft has spent the time here and listed all the devices that are compatible with Teams and Skype as well. You can either find the link by just literally Googling or binging, if you want to do that. Just type Microsoft Teams devices. That'll take you straight to it. Or you can follow the link at blogs.chiffers.com/links. That's a shameless plug to my own personal blogs. Shameless plug. There are many of them throughout the call. But yeah, either way, go and have a look, because it's full of really, really useful information there about what type of device you should get. The other thing to take into account is when you're buying, say, for instance, the 65Ts, there are multiple versions of this device, right? There's the consumer version of it, which you can go into an electronics store, like here in Australia would be JB Hi-Fi, or Best Buy in the US or something like that, or Amazon. And then there's also the Microsoft Teams edition of it as well. So the one that's been certified for Teams. Make sure you get the right one. Don't just walk into Best Buy and get yourself a headset. All right, that's enough about handsets and headsets. Let's talk about Microsoft Teams room devices. So here's what potentially a Teams room could look like. Now, this is a little bit out of date now, because this is using probably Skype room system technology here. But we've got a what looks like a Logitech panel on the front of the table here, plus some kind of speaker microphone setup, and then a rally camera or similar here, and a display there as well. So what is a Teams room system? If you're not familiar with this, it's basically a purpose-built device that's been certified by Microsoft to work with Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft has spent an enormous amount of time working with manufacturers to ensure that regardless of what room system you buy from manufacturers, the experience will always be the same. The touch panels always be the same. That's really important. Of course, Teams room systems do replace Skype room systems. However, the two are interchangeable. So if you get a Teams room system and you're still booking Skype meetings, that's fine. You can still join them from those room systems. No issues whatsoever. And they are designed to be user-friendly and intuitive as well. Here's a few manufacturers that produce them. Here's a close-up of the actual screen itself. Now, of course, this has probably changed over time, but a few key things here to point out are the join button. So those of you that aren't familiar, you schedule a meeting, you make the room booking, you invite the room into the booking, the room system gets the booking information and presents the user with a join button. So they walk in the room, they hit join, and they're on the call. Simple as that. You can't mess that up. Even the CIO can't mess that up. There are some other things here as well. So if you've got PSTN connectivity enabled for the room, you can make an outbound call as well, direct from the room, and you can also project content to the screen in the room as well. So various different systems have various different methods of ingest. Most of them have HDMI inputs either built into the display itself or built into the NUC that sits behind the TV, and then you'll obviously have to run a cable from there to the table there. But various different ways to use that system. And as I said, it is both compatible with Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams. We are calling them Teams room systems, but they also will accept Skype meetings as well. Now that little star there is incorrect now because this is available. You can order these. These are the Hub 2S's. If you haven't seen one of these in action, go over to my blog, blog.chiffers.com. There's a link on the next slide. I've done a quick video of a walk around of one of these devices and how the camera works. They're really, really cool devices. A lot more sleeker, a lot more sexier, much easier to put together, and a lot easier to move around as well than the original Surface Hub. All of that information there is in the Microsoft Teams devices catalog. Again, Google Microsoft Teams devices or blog.chiffers.com/links. All right. Let's talk a little bit about interop. And whilst I do that, let me have a bit of a swig of my beer. Otherwise, it's going to go warm and no one wants that. If you haven't already heard, I am partly British. So I'm British Australian. So people are always giving me a hard time about drinking warm beer. So I'm not about warm beer. I don't know who is. That's nice and cold. All right, on to interop. So we spoke before about reusing our investments with Microsoft Teams, the Ciscos and the Polycoms, etc. of the world. Here's a few different systems here. There's a Cisco Spark and a Polycom group series of some sort, 500, 700, not sure. What does it say? Oh, it says 700. Yes, possibly. Straining my eyes to see that. There are a lot of customers today that have these systems within their environments. They may have potentially bought the group series to work with Skype for Business. And of course, you've gone in there and said, hey, that's great, but you can't actually use that directly with Microsoft Teams. It doesn't have a Teams interface to it. And you need a third-party service today to allow that to work with Teams. Same thing as the Cisco Spark board as well, right? So customers have invested in those heavily. I think they work quite well, the whiteboard especially. And as I said before, you can't go in and just tell a customer to replace everything on day one with Microsoft Teams room environments. It would be great if we could do that, of course, because then the user experience would be fantastic. But we need some kind of interop to kind of bridge that gap for the moment, get everyone up to speed on Teams, and then slowly move away from the Ciscos and the the Polycom group series over to Microsoft Teams certified devices. How do we do that? Well, there's three different interop services available that I'm aware of. There's Pexit, Polycom, and BlueJeans. They pretty much all do the same thing. What they do, they have two jobs. The first one is to act as a transcoding service. So a lot of those room systems, they don't talk Microsoft Teams. They talk SIP and they talk H323. Teams doesn't support those what am I trying to say? Those media codecs. So you need something that sits in the middle that does a bit of transcoding so that Teams can talk to Polycom and Cisco can talk Teams, right? So these three here act as that transcoding service. What they also do, and especially what BlueJeans will do, is it'll inject your meeting invite with BlueJeans specific information. Now, I know Polycom, RealConnect, and Pexit will also do this too. So here we have a typical meeting join experience or calendar invite that's been created. This is actually my calendar, my join information here. So we have the typical join Microsoft Teams link and the phone number and the conference ID, but then we also have these 3 lines down here about joining from a video conference device. So what this is here is the information that BlueJeans or Polycom RealConnect in the background has created within the meeting request itself. Now, depending on what system you're using, in this case, I'll talk about BlueJeans. BlueJeans has a service that then receives that request and pushes it down to the Cisco device in the room. So that means that you can walk up to a Cisco Spark board or a Cisco a legacy VC device, and you get that one-touch join experience to join you straight into a Teams meeting. That means that users can still continue to use those devices and they don't need to know what happens in the back end. It's magic, right? It just happens automatically. So you can bridge the gap for the moment of bringing your legacy existing investments in VC into Microsoft Teams. Of course, down the track, where possible, you can replace that in-room technology with Teams meeting room systems once you get a bit of this, bit of budget. But for now, this definitely solves the problem. So if you want to take a note of that, again, links are at blog.chivers.com/links. But Pexit, Polycom, and BlueJeans, they all 3 of them work really great. The other thing I point out as well is with Polycom at the moment, if you have Polycom devices such as Group Series or Trios, many of our customers have Trio 8800s. Polycom will offer you up to a year's worth of free interop service to get those systems working in Microsoft Teams. So definitely take advantage of that if you or your customers are using Polycom at the moment. All right, we're doing all right on time at the moment. I've only got about another 9 minutes and a few more slides to go, so we'll see how we go. Let's talk about a little bit of magic. Now, this is the cool stuff within Microsoft Teams. The first one being that now anyone can start a meeting. Now, before in the Skype for Business world, if, say, for instance, your PA or a PA of an organization scheduled a Skype meeting and then a whole bunch of people from external just dialed in using their phones and no one actually from inside the organization actually clicked the start meeting button, or they went through the pain of saying that you're the meeting organizer and then entering a conference pin as well, if anyone can remember the conference pin. I certainly can't. The meeting wouldn't start, which meant that you'd have people sat on the phone listening to hold music. Well, now in Teams, you can enable this feature here, which is let anonymous people start a meeting. So when they connect, if this feature is turned on, anyone can start the meeting, which is really cool. So I'd suggest that you jump into the Teams admin center, so portal.office.com, sign in, go to Teams, have a look at the meeting policies, turn that on if it's certainly a bugbear for you guys. Some of you are already using this feature. I'm sure everyone's already seen this clip of the BBC News guy. This is a really cool feature, background blur. I use it all the time. It works really, really well on desktops. Coming soon as well, you will be able to, I think it's starting to be rolled out to certain tenants. You'll be able to choose a customized background that you can pick there as well. So you could make yourself look like you're at the beach, or maybe you are at the beach and you want to hide that, and so you've got an office background instead. So various different ways of using that. If you haven't heard this story about the background blur and why it was created as well, I think it's really cool. So I was told at an event earlier this year why background blur was created. So it was created by an engineer who was hard of hearing, and so she would sit during video calls and watch people's lips during the call. But she found that what was happening with the background and people's hands and movements, etc., was quite distracting. And so she came up with the idea of being able to blur the background to focus on the presenter, which is really cool, right? It enables accessibility in Teams, which is what it's all about. So really cool how, something that affects quite potentially a small amount of people, or smaller amount of people than the general population, is used by everyone. I think it's really cool, really, really cool. You can also search transcripts for meeting recordings now as well, which again is a really awesome accessibility feature. There are a few things that you need to turn on within your tenant to support this, but the end result is that you can actually have the ability to live transcript what potentially I'm saying. I know I have a bit of a kind of weird Pommy / British / Australian accent, so it might have a problem understanding me, but it's really cool. So as you talk, your text comes along at the bottom, and then later on that closed captioning is saved to the recording, which is uploaded to Microsoft Stream, and then not only can you watch the stream back and share it with other people, but you can also search the stream as well. So if during a meeting I started talking about motorcycles, I could jump into the search and type the word motorcycle and find the part in the video where I started bantering about motorcycles. Or maybe someone mentioned my name, and so I can do a search for Craig, and up comes the point in which, Joe in accounts asked me to do an action item, for example, to remember to bring biscuits to the meeting next week or something like that. So really powerful, really good way of catching up with meetings that you're not able to attend in person as well. So you can scroll back through and watch the key points that may apply to you. As I said, maybe the whole meeting doesn't apply to you, but really powerful feature. Sure, some of you guys have seen this as well, the bringing the whiteboard into the meeting with you. So we spoke about the Panacast, the Panasonic Panacast before, and about how people within the meeting room themselves can view what's obviously being written on the whiteboard. But if you're remote and someone's trying to angle the camera around so you can all sort of see the whiteboard, maybe the sun's reflecting off of it in a bad way, wouldn't it be cool if we could bring that whiteboard into the session with us? And with Teams, you can now do that. So just using a standard webcam that you have lying around, doesn't need to be anything fancy. It can literally just be a standard USB cam that you plug into the MTR system. You aim it at the whiteboard, and then the back end of Teams, Azure has some pretty smart services that run there that capture a picture of the whiteboard that then allows you to stand in front of it, which is what's being demonstrated here, and still be able to see the content on the whiteboard. Now, not only that, not only are we bringing the whiteboard in, we're also then able to take a snapshot of that whiteboard in our meeting for later on, and then continue to edit it electronically within Microsoft Teams itself, which is really cool. So it kind of brings to life and makes that old school whiteboard in the meeting room still useful. I mean, I still use them for custom meetings. I still like drawing all over the whiteboard, etc. And so having the ability to bring it inside the Teams meeting itself is really, really powerful. Proxy join, if you haven't seen this already, this is something you can use on your laptop or your mobile phone. The way it works is it has a Bluetooth base station built into the MTR system itself that sends out a signal and says, hey, I'm here. And then if you've got Teams running on your laptop or your mobile phone and you walk into the room can sense that you're there, and you can automatically join the call from the meeting. So I can say, hey, I've just walked into the boardroom. I want to join the call on the boardroom system. Bang. It's also really useful for finding rooms that are not currently in use as well. So instead of walking around the whole floor, you can just, oh yeah, that room's free. Tap a button, bang, I'm in the meeting on the boardroom, as opposed to me trying to join on my mobile phone and aim the camera, etc. myself. All right, 3 minutes left. We can do this, guys. The last thing I want to talk about, and probably the most critical thing of the entire project, is about adoption. If you don't succeed with adoption, your project is a failure. So I walked into a customer about 6 or 7 months ago. I won't name the customer, but I walked in there and I sat down with the guys and I said, look, so what's going on? And they said, we've rolled out Teams, but no one's using it. We gave everyone headsets, everyone mobile phones, and the headsets remain in the desk, in the drawer, and everyone's just using the mobile phone, just calling each other on the mobile phone. No one's using the application. And I said, right. I said, okay, so how did you handle your change adoption? How did you promote that Teams was here? And of course, you get a blank stare. What do you mean promote it? We just installed the application on the user's desktop and expected them to use it. Now, of course, we all know that that's going to fail. Driving adoption is the #1 critical thing when it comes to ensuring success with your rollout of Microsoft Teams, and with anything, in fact. And I'd like to point out 5 key areas for this. I don't have a pen, otherwise I'd paint my fingers that color and draw a nice smiley face on there, but the slide kind of captures it. These are the critical areas that you have to focus on to ensure that your project is a success. Please don't forget this. If there's one thing that you take away from today's call, it's this. So the first one is sponsorship. You need to make sure that the right people are sponsoring your project. Now, the right people, I hate to say it, but they're not in IT. The right people do not sit on the help desk. They're not change managers. They're not project managers. The right people are the people at the top of the business. They're the people that sit in the in boardrooms, in exec meetings. When you see a CEO or CIO walking around the floor with a headset on, that's going to get you engaged in what's going on. You're like, oh, what's happening there? Why aren't we part of that? You know, if you see someone in IT walking around with a headset on, you probably think, oh, you know, what's he doing, etc. It has to come from the top down. So make sure you've got the right sponsorship for your project. Second one is communication. So in short, make sure that everyone knows what is going on. Users don't want to come in Monday morning and find their old school desk phone has been ripped out and replaced with a headset and maybe an A4 sheet of paper that says, welcome to Teams, enjoy your new headset, come and see us if you have any problems, right? As a user, that doesn't make me feel like I'm part of the journey. It just makes me feel like I've been kind of fobbed off. So communicate, let everyone know what's happening, get them involved in what's happening, get them to pick their headset, get them to come along to meetings, promote what it is that you're doing, but communicate, definitely communicate. And that's not just sending an email out once a week just saying, you know, welcome to Teams, etc. That's sessions. Invite people along, blow up balloons, get everyone involved. Of course, we touched on this before, but technology, ensuring the right headsets, handsets, and meeting room devices are in place from day one, where possible. As I said, we can't always rip the old Ciscos and Polys out, but where possible, make sure everything's working, make sure everyone has a great headset from day one. Don't do what a recent customer did and say, oh, actually, we'll start with the old iPhone headphones. These are actually Samsung headphones or Google Pixel headphones. We'll start with those, and then if people complain, we'll give them a headset. Don't do that, because to get someone to complain about something, they've already been through the pain for 4 or 5 days or weeks or months, or some people may never bring it up. And your worst case scenario is you know, the system doesn't get used and your project's a failure. And lastly, support. Don't forget about your help desk. Don't forget about training your staff, training people. Find change champions who are excited about the change itself. Get them involved. Make sure your support staff are trained so that when a user on Monday morning calls the help desk and says, hey, my Microsoft Teams headset's not working, the first thing that support says is, huh? When was that rolled out? Make sure everyone's across what's going on. And I think that cycles back to communication as well. And of course, if that always fails, just give everyone cake, right? Everyone loves cake. That solves all problems. All right, some links for you guys. As I said, shameless plug, blog.chiffers.com/links. At some point, I'm imagining Randy will provide a shortcut or of some sort to the recording of this session. I'm hoping I'll be able to post a link to that there. I'm also pretty active on Twitter as well. If you want to tweet your questions at me at any time, it's just @CChiffers. Various things I talk about, including motorcycles, cats, and Teams and Skype as well. For now, thank you very much for your time, everyone.